Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Beck.
Here.
Colterman.
Here.
Streisand. Here. Camper.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Hendricks.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here.
Alright, the first 6 items on this agenda make up the consent agenda for this evening.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Alright, first public hearing this evening is consideration of an ordinance approving the preliminary and final plat of Yurth Edition. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. Yurth Edition's a plat of land out where the old Heritage Homes site was south of town. A local contractor wishes to relocate his office out there. So what the property owners elected to do is split the lot into 2 parcels as opposed to one large parcel and continue to rent the location to the next tenant. All the remainder lot will still be the commercial use of La Creta and then the bank that's there. That will continue as always has. The platted lots meet the requirements of C2 Highway Commercial District. Currently, there are utilities and streets to the location, so we will not be extending any of those. PC unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary and final plat.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions or comments for Tim? It is a public hearing, so I can open up to the public for any public comment at this time. Would the public wish to comment on this item? Please indicate. No one? All right. I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to the council for any further discussion. Any questions or comments? Or if someone would like to introduce the ordinance?
I'll introduce the ordinance.
All right, an ordinance to approve the plat entitled Yurth Edition, a replat of parcel 2 of the lot split of lots 3 and 4, South Crest subdivision located in the southeast 1/4 of section 32. What is that? T11N? Is that right? R3E? Okay.
Yes.
Looks like code of the 6 p.m. City of Seward, Seward County, Nebraska, as hereinafter set forth, to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. The ordinance has been read by title, is designated as ordinance number 2022-12, and the title is hereby approved. I need a motion to dispense with statutory rule.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Again, this is ordinance number 2022-12. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is, shall ordinance number 2022-12 be finally passed and adopted? Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Alright, thank you, Tim. Item number 2, also a public hearing, consideration of an ordinance rezoning property identified as Volneck Edition from Agricultural District to RR Rural Residential District. Welcome back.
A request to rezone a parcel of land that is outside of the Seward corporate limits This is up on 252nd Road, northeast Seward area. It is within our territorial jurisdiction, even though it's outside the city limits. The planning commission approved a minor plat dividing the rural residential parcel of 8 and some odd acres. As a result, they all meet the zoning for rural residential. Again, the planning commission unanimously recommended the rezone for approval.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none this time is a public hearing, so I'll open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing no one wishing to comment, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to the council for any further discussion. Or someone would like to introduce the ordinance. All right. An ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Seward, Nebraska to rezone certain property within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Seward, Nebraska, now zone Ag Agricultural District to RR Rural Residential District, specifically tracts of land north of Old Mill Road and west of 252nd Road, to describe the property rezoned, to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. The ordinance has been read by title, is designated as ordinance number 2022-13, and the title is hereby approved. I need a motion to dispense with statutory rule.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Saying none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Again, this is ordinance number 2022-13. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, again, the question, this shall ordinance number 2022-13 be finally passed and adopted. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Alright, item number 3 is also a public hearing, special use permit application for 648 North 9th Street to allow construction of an accessory building. Tim, welcome back.
All right, the applicant wishes to construct a 1,680 square foot accessory building on his property. His intent is to remove the existing buildings that are on the property, which equate to approximately 1,550 square feet as they stand, and erect a new structure that's more visibly appealing and better located on the lot behind the principal structure and to the rear of the lot. The current ordinance 410-32-5 limits a maximum size of 900 square feet on lots less than an acre. The ordinance also allows for a special use permit to exceed this maximum, provided that they can meet all the requirements of the section, such as setbacks and height, which he does. The PC recommended approval of the permit with the note that the existing structures be removed prior to the erection of the new building. Their fear was that the buildings would stay once the new building was up, so they just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Any questions or comments from the council? Again, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public comment portion of the public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item, please do so at this time. Seeing no one wishing to comment, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to the council for any further discussion. I believe it just requires a simple motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Alright, under administrative items, item number 1 is consideration of a voluntary annexation of Lot 1, Knox Addition. This is the third and final reading. Is there anything you want to add before I do the third reading? Is there nothing? Okay. An ordinance declaring the annexation of certain contiguous and adjacent tracts of land, urban and suburban in character, more specifically Lot 1, Knox Addition, to the city of Seward, to the corporate limits of the city of Seward, Nebraska, and extending the limits thereof accordingly, to describe the real estate to be annexed and its boundaries, to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time this ordinance shall take effect. At this time, we just move on to the actual approval, right, Kelly? Okay, so, again, this is ordinance number 2022-10. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, again, the question is, shall ordinance number 2022-10 be finally passed and adopted? Please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
This is the last ordinance for this evening, so I'll need one final motion to make all of the ordinances a part of the permanent record.
So moved.
Motion and a second, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Is that all we need to do on that one, Kelly? Okay. Alright, item number 2, this is consideration of a purchase agreement for a property located at 341 North Sixth Street.
I'll take this one, and I'll just quickly note, what we're gonna do tonight is just discuss this real quick, and then any other comments and things like that, and then we'll move on administratively, correct, Kelly? Because we need to do a public hearing on this one.
Right, yeah, so we've reached terms on the purchase of the property. I've got a purchase agreement here signed by the sellers. I'm gonna ask the mayor to sign this tonight. There's still a contingency that we have city council approval after a public hearing. So we didn't get a public hearing on the agenda for tonight, so we're gonna have our public hearing at the next meeting, but I'm gonna have Josh sign this tonight, and I'll send this to the sellers. We still have the built-in contingency, but this will allow title to get started and for us to still close during this fiscal year, so.
Again, this is the property for the public and stuff. This is the property that's located at the old Jones Bank branch. Currently resides where Lula Bell is, on the northeast corner of the Civic Center block. And so we identified that this was something that would be in the interest of the city years ago in discussions with the Civic Center Commission and also the City Council. And so we felt with the opportunity of this becoming for sale and available, we were given terms to the city attorney, and so we met those terms, and so we'll bring this back for the final public hearing at the next meeting, and then be good to go. So, if you have any questions, that's how we'll proceed.
Alright, seeing no questions, we'll move on to the next item. Item number 3 is presentation of proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget.
Alright. I'm gonna turn this on. Just for those in the public, there is a couple extra copies floating around here. If somebody wants one, there's a public one over there, and then this one is specifically budget. If anybody needs to come inside, take a look at something. So we'll get this going.
Someone should be charging. We'll figure it out later. Thank you.
On the other side. I might have to move over here to the height. All right. With me tonight, I have Seward Finance Director, Treasurer Extraordinaire, Nick Wolf, who prepped this budget this year with myself in coordination with the mayor. We've included in your packet, you should have gotten a memo drafted by me that looks very similar to our memo from last year. Also, you'll have a cash balance sheet, the CIP, the budget, and then also I believe the airport authority budget is also included in there. Our plan for tonight is we're just gonna kind of follow through on the memo that was drafted, hit the highlights, address a few issues. Specifically, we would like some insight into the COLA that was offered and noted in here, and also comparability. So we have some guidance moving forward on some items that are still up in the air. Usually we kind of see where we can go and make recommendations on those. There are a lot of items that are, I need to adjust that thing, it's just slightly blurry. Make an adjustment here. Unless that's my eyes.
No.
Let's see.
No, it is a little thing. There you
My
go.
glasses on.
Much better.
There we go.
Felt like terms of the eye doctor.
Zoom in a
for
little bit
minute.
more too. As the calendar stated that we sent to you in the email last week, potentially if we wanna make some substantial changes and a redouble check, we can have a special meeting on the 30th, is what we tentatively scheduled. Otherwise, we'll plan for the formal budget hearing, I believe on the 6th. Announce that, and then if still we're unable to finalize a budget, we'll have to the 20th to do another meeting. So we have potentially 3 more meetings ahead of us to make adjustments and changes for the final budget. One element that was involved this year that's kind of a, I don't wanna say a kerfuffle, but we would like to kind of have an idea on the levy, is that there's a new requirement that postcards are sent out to, by all taxing authorities. They come from the county themselves, county clerk. But if you are over a certain threshold on your increase in revenue based on your levy, you're required to be listed on that and attend that public meeting and essentially explain your budget, your presentation.
Is that joint thing?
It's the joint meeting held on, I believe it is going to be September 26th at the Civic Center. And so depending on, under, I believe, and Nick can confirm with me, under the current proposed budget, we would not need to attend that meeting as the budget is proposed by the mayor. But if we were to either, for example, if we left the levy alone, correct Nick? If we just left the levy exactly how we have in previous years, we would qualify for that meeting and we would have to attend and provide explanation of why we're going above and beyond. It's a 2% threshold minus allowable growth, is how it's defined. Another element we just found out last night is that we do actually have the final valuation. That was certified to us just late yesterday, correct, Nick? Yep. And so it's actually slightly lower than our proposed budget. Don't know how that happened, but we were working off our best guess scenario, and so, but we have the official one now, so we'll kind of walk through that as we get there. So that's kind of the order of things tonight, and so we'll just go ahead and hit the highlights as I noted in the memo, and then we can go from there. The general items, so these are the things we talked about first. The first thing is with benefits. It's always a big one for us, is the cost of employees and employee benefits, specifically health insurance. Last year we had a 7.9% increase. This year we have an average increase for health insurance of 0. So we will not be adjusting premiums. We will not be adjusting anything for employees, so that's a significant savings to the city, where we're seeing predominantly about 10% increases in the industry. So I can explain why, but essentially it's some of it's turnover. So 0% increase, that's the third 0% increase in the last 4 years. The next one is the COLA. As we define the cost of living adjustment, we make these predominantly every year during budget time. The COLA is calculated through a process with the Personnel Finance and Audit Committee. They take a look at the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, inflation rates, as those are reported in July. The July rate was 9.1%, the highest in known recent years. And so we took that percentage. It was included in the initial budget that was given, and information that was given to the Personnel Finance and Audit Committee. And then we presented them with the cost per COLA, every percentage up to that. And then they made a recommendation. Their ultimate recommendation was a 5% cost of living adjustment. That 5% matches the average we're seeing in comparable municipalities. Another thing that was brought up is the Social Security adjustment for 2022 was 5.9%. And so industry trends, that 5% kind of holds true to there. When that recommendation was made by the Personnel Finance and Audit Committee, that was included in the initial offered budget you see before you here today by the mayor. And so we changed it down from the 9 to 5% to match the recommendation of the Personnel Finance and Audit Committee. We'll get into comparability a little bit later. I have a separate memo I'll submit to you on that one. Property workers' comp liability insurance. The city does not anticipate a substantial increase in any of these things, but we have included a 5% increase overall in premiums as our best guess scenario. We have not received this premium, this element from our insurance provider. So we've continued to try and move these items like health insurance, review of the COLA and all these things more into the budget season, but we're kind of still tied when we get our insurance premiums, workers' comp and stuff. included 5% as of now, based on our current discussions. Any questions so far on those items? Administration, the majority of items in administration are revenues from property tax and sales tax, and so we'll quickly walk through that. We anticipate a continued anticipation of sales tax increase. We budgeted just below $900,000 in 21-22, and our estimates for this year will be approximately 10% higher, almost at $982,000 in sales tax revenues is what we're projecting for the end of the year, with a little bit over a month and a half left. Next year, we're projecting $951,963 in property tax, or in sales tax. That does not include the estimated $390,000 that will be generated for the wellness center come January 1. That is in a separate portion of your budget now. We've created a separate sheet, and I've outlined that, but that will be the capital improvement fund, so that we track that for audit purposes, for grant purposes, and everything else. When we talk to our auditors, it'll have its own sheet, show revenue in, expense out for that, and so we do not include that. So essentially, our sales tax will continue to track just as it is, and you'll be able to see that from year to year, minus the wellness center revenues. Those are in a different one. We'll re-note those later. That's sales tax. On the levy, the previous levy was a total of 0.35. That included the airport authority in 21-22. The mayor's budget that you see before you has recommended a decrease in the total levy. We would note that there's going to be a slight adjustment now that we've had the property tax valuation come in. The mayor's proposed budget, as he offered, was to keep the revenues the same for this year. So the total revenue generated by the levy in the proposed budget you see before you and the budget last year are the exact same amount of revenue. Thus, a decrease in the levy, the proposed levy was the city portion, just the city, not the airport, was reduced from 0.318 to 0.293. But I think, what did we think that was going to go up to? 0.299 would probably be the final one to keep revenues exactly the same as last year. Right now, with the proposed one you see here, valuations we got last night, we'd actually decrease revenue. And so the mayor's proposal was to keep revenues the same, correct, Mayor? Okay. So that is what's being proposed.
And just to clarify, this is so that even though a lot of property tax valuations did go up, by the decrease in the levy, that would offset the average increase. So the actual taxes paid on average would not go up based on the levy. So Greg's kind of saying, he's kind of bearing the lead as far as what this does, so.
And there's no guarantee again, it's an average, and if you had a significant increase and other property taxes didn't, some of them may go down if the levy reduces, and then others may go up because it outpaced the reduction. But the overall property tax ask is the same as last year. That is what's offered.
I can just tell you from my experience when I was working in the legislature, that was always the give and take when they talked about property taxes. Was elected officials would say, well, we didn't raise our levy, we didn't raise taxes, and the counter was, but my valuations went up, so I'm paying more in taxes, so why aren't you lowering the levy to offset that increase? That's what we're trying to accomplish with this number.
Any questions on that specifically? So kind of two major items, sales tax revenues and property tax.
Greg, what was the number you were expecting, 900 and what in sales tax? Or what was the?
Minus
The 390.
the 390,000 for the wellness center, we're expecting 951,963.
That note off to the side kind of shows the total there.
Yeah, and do you see that in your,
Gotcha.
yeah. It'll break all that out, because there are some elements that go out for motor vehicle sales tax. We also pull debt service, the total sales tax, everything included. This includes even the 390,000, correct?
Yep.
Is 2.39 million. That's the total. All sales tax revenues expected. we calculated, I know if you do the math, if you say January start, but sales tax rolls in approximately 2 months behind.
Yep.
So that's why we anticipated 7 months of revenue for the wellness center, even though we'll start collecting January 1. It'll be 2 months behind, and so when it shows up in the fiscal year, as we do the calculations, we'll have 7 months of revenue based on those estimations. Any other questions? Okay. I'll just scan through. I don't think there's anything predominantly different from last year on this. These offsets will be set and they're marked by what we do for revenues or any adjustments we make in the utility funds. So stop me if you had a question you marked previously in administration, let me know. But how we pay for Kelly's in there, some of those fun things, and then some general administrative items. And then the transfer is a street transfer that we make every year to the street fund based on their net needs. So that's administration. Building and codes, as I noted in my memo, there's no significant changes here other than we're still waiting on the new plotter. And then Tim and Mike stare at me because it's been a year.
Right out of here.
It's stuck in a shipping container somewhere. We have a loaner that's been sitting in there for 6 months now. We have no clue when it's coming. So. Yep. Other than that, building and codes, no significant changes at all. Just minor adjustments to different line items based on cost. So, there's that. Any questions on building and codes? Moving on, Cdbg, economic development for us this year, this is just closing out pending DTRs. So as that cash travels through us and is paid out to applicants, successful projects, and to send as our administrator, that $335,000 estimated for next year, some of it will go out this year, some will go out next year. So, and then we'll close those out. Capital improvements, this is essentially the wellness center, correct, Nick?
Yep.
And so this is just the capital side of the wellness center, not the O&M. And so what we've anticipated, we try to put a budget together that's approximately the $18 million that we see anticipated for this project. So you see $390,000 in tax revenues and sales tax collected over 7 months. The shovel-ready grant will be $2.5 million up front, and then $2.5 million at the back end as you close your project out. That's how they're distributing. So we'll have 2.5 to get us started. That'll easily cover design and engineering and all that stuff and help out right out of the gates. And then we have, I have the breakdown of the 5-year plan as all the private donations were given. Some of them were given over a 5-year period, so they might have donated $10,000 each year for 5 years, a $50,000 gift for the project. I have that whole breakdown. The first year breakdown only is $2 million in total cash contributions to the project. Some of them have already been given to Seward Changing the Game already, and so it may be higher than that, but as it was anticipated on the front end, it was 2.5 million, or 2 million in private funds for gifts. And then we did a short-term loan and a long-term loan. If things don't change or other grant funds aren't successful, we think the 4.3 will balance out the remainder of the gifts portion of it. And so we can do a short-term loans for probably 4 years or less to cover those items. It may be significantly less if the second year rolls in before we need it. And then the bonding amount would be approximately 9.7 million to cover as the debt rolls in on sales tax and some of the other items that are left on that. So, all in total, combined $18,890,000. And then the same for capital fixed expense. We just, to balance out the balance sheet, we didn't want to look like we had all this massive cash infusion and then we didn't have an expense, so people are like, look at all the cash we have, we're cash heavy. We just said, we plan to expend it all, we'll list it as an expenditure, it may not roll out like that as we move and proceed through the fiscal year. But design, we estimated about $1 million, and then the rest for building capital construction. Net zero in regards to the project, and we'll proceed through that process, and if we see increased cost, the plan up front is to try and reestablish the gifting process and the donation process, and also reach out and get some more grants. I will let you know that some of the foundations that we kind of held off on based on our Hewitt Foundation response actually reached out to us and said, oh, no, wait, we've heard about your project and we do want you to apply. And so we have meetings next week with a few more foundations for substantial private grant money. So we're excited for that. We'll put our best foot forward. Again, we think our best opportunity will be when the design is done, and then based on that final design, what the costs are. If we see increased costs, we feel like we have a very good shot of filling that with some private foundational money. Hewitt specifically mentioned that. So we think that's the route to go, and then also reactivate the donation wing of sewer change meeting. So, any questions on the capital improvement side of the wellness center? And we'll talk wellness center a little bit later, too, updates on that. We kind of got some fun stuff, but that will be on the agenda later tonight. Cemetery, I don't think there's anything significant in cemetery. We're gonna do some gravel roadway and then asphalting in North Cemetery and Greenwood, as we tend to do every year. If anybody has anything specific, our big one last year was the software upgrade. That was a significant expense, and so that is not in this year. But, and then we have we're buying a pickup truck, so replacing the pickup finally, that we rescheduled for. Questions on cemetery? All right, we'll keep rolling. Civic Center. No significant items in Civic Center from last year. We'll begin work on renovations, but we're trying to figure out the status of offices for SCCDP. Once we sort that out, we'll feel comfortable. Again, we talked tonight about the possibility of the purchase of the old Jones Bank branch on the northeast corner. That opens up a lot of opportunity, and some discussions with the Civic Center Trust about different things that we can do with that. It could be offices for SCCDP, it could be a number of other things. We've discussed, if we're doing renovations to other city buildings, it could be a landing point for city offices to go back and forth during renovations. Sky's the limit for what we'll ultimately do with that, but this item of the location of SCCDP and working with the trust to make sure that we can continue to house them needs to be sorted out first, and then they'll give us a lot of directions of where we can go. So, but the purchase of that property is a city purchase, that is not a Civic Center Trust purchase at this point. And then their big one is just then, once they get the remodel going, that's really an ADA focused remodel. That's the predominant reason, and it's just an aging piece of infrastructure. We're very concerned about, literally there's no floor drains in the bathroom, stuff like that. So when a toilet blows up, when your city administrator's got his arm stuck up it, it's, not rolling down the hallway through the carpet. So,
Great.
Lessons learned.
On 54207, that audit and accounting, 361, is that just divided up from what we do with ANGL overall? So their auditing and accounting is included in basically our total fee to ANGL
Yep.
as
Do
an
you know-
entity?
Do you know how we break that out?
It's, I can't remember off the top of my head how that, allocation is split, but it's based on an allocation that we spread across, so like the utilities are hit harder than some of the smaller departments are, but.
Because of prime work demanding. Okay.
Any other questions on Civic Center? That is debt service. This is a standard one we have in here. This is how we roll our debt service, predominantly for bonded items. Also, the golf course is included in this as well, correct?
Yes.
Which is not bonded, but is a short-term loan. And so our debt service, that comes out of predominantly sales tax is some of it, but then there's debt service to some of the other accounts, correct, Nick?
Yep.
So, for utilities and things like that. So, nothing special there. We see a significant drop-off in debt service, as I noted, in 23, 24. And that, as we talked about with the streets, that's probably our next great opportunity to make a big jump with rolled-off debt service, to take that debt service and roll it into some more large-scale street projects and get underway and then bond those again. Those are probably what we would anticipate and hope for. Questions on debt service? Okay. Next up is a pool, Downing Pool. Downing Pool doesn't have any significant items. We'll continue to diagnose the only one we would have weird issue with was natural gas. Natural gas ended up being significant right there, kind of circle it for you. We budgeted 10,000 and we estimating a potential ending at 25,000. We had a huge natural gas bill on the front end of this, and we did everything we could think of to figure out what happened with that. I will say that we had a new heater installed, and so our anticipation was it was gonna go down. If you look at the revenues, or the actuals before, 1920 was because we didn't heat the pool at all because we thought COVID might wipe our pool out for the year. So we just decided not to heat the pool. But last year was only 5,751 with the new heater. This year, we had a $13,000 bill at the beginning of the season to heat the pool. And we went down there with Black Hills Energy, we tested all the metering. We had the company that installed the heater come out, the water department that's involved in a lot of the maintenance of all that equipment out there, and went through it. And it was just noted with how cool it was in May when we got started and filled that facility. If you drove by sometimes early in the morning, there's literally steam coming off of it. But to get it prepped by the time it needed to be up and functional to have people in the water for lifeguard training and everything else, we did our normal schedule. And so what happened afterwards is, one, we cut down and we shut off the heater through most portions of the summer to cover days when it was, those 2 weeks that were 90 degrees plus. We also had them go in and actually learn to read the meter itself, to monitor the therms, because it's really not about the price. I'll note probably a third of that price, if you looked on your own Black Hills Energy bill, they have that February storm from 2020, I believe. There's a fee for that that increases about everybody's bill a third. So we knew that there was gonna be a bigger hit once that hit the billing, but that doesn't make up for the difference, and so we were focused on the therm usage of that facility during that time. And so the staff, the management, anybody operating the pool learned how to do the readings, and we made daily readings on the therms, and we didn't see any unusual readings for the rest of the season once we turned the heat back on. So they will monitor that from day one when the pool becomes operational again next year. And we don't know if it was just a fluke with weather, hit the wrong time, cool temperatures. I remember the swim team canceled, I think, like a week and a half at the start of their season because they could not get the pool as too cold. So we may have just got hit, and we'll rediscuss as temperatures take in May next year as well. But we couldn't find any mechanical issue. Adam Bodie has about 500 emails back and forth with Black Hills, just being like, this is ridiculous, how can this be possible? They sent out every maintenance person they can to review all the stuff. We measured it, we had somebody see if we had a gas leak, all these things. And
They would look into water,
what?
or you pumping any amounts of water? in
No,
there?
we actually are really good this year on water. We fixed the major leak last year before the season started, so we're not losing water nearly to the level we did last year.
Because that would cause an issue
Yep.
here.
So, and it wasn't anything internal like in the bathhouse, things are real, well, maybe it's that one, maybe it's a water heater leak or something else, and we looked at all those as well, and there was nothing in there, so. It's a fluke one, but we've tried to implement things for next year to monitor it. If we start seeing ridiculous therm usage, we'll shut it off and then reevaluate what's going on, or the temperatures, or whatever else. That's the plan going forward. That's the pool, nothing else there is big or exciting, so, our kind of standard maintenance items like deck piping and stuff like that, so. Economic development is next. The way we do economic, LBA 40 is, no significant issues. We receive $150,000 in sales tax proceeds, and then all the loan repayments that we've had for previous LBA 40 loans, and then we budget to expend that entire amount, just so it's a net zero, approximately, no exact, there you go. So, that's where we're at for LB 840 for the year. Haven't had a lot of applications in, over the last few months, that will be in your report in September from the CARC, but, we'll also have to plan for reauthorizing this program next year, so that's another element of what we'll be involved in. And I think the mayor would reiterate that that's a really important part of our overall makeup for revenue, both on the economic development side, giving back to businesses, and then also supplementing to keep property taxes low. So, any questions on LD 840? All right, electric. Electric has some significant capital items. This year, though, we are proposing a 0% rate increase after 3 straight years of 1.5% to 3% increases. We feel that the fund can handle this year. NMPP did recommend a 2.6% increase for this year. That's our standard survey system. The most recent, we're still sitting kind of in the middle on average rates for residential side. In the 127 communities that are sampled by NMPP, and then we come in as low as 21st on some commercial rates. So a 0% rate increase. We'll continue to recommend that all the property that was purchased for the substation and the rail campus, anything that's purchased out of that for economic development, those funds go back into the economic development fund. The original rail campus site where PetSource, Lavander, and some of those are located, that will go back to the general fund. So, we can hit any highlights you want. We still have the franchise fee, which is a significant out. We're continuing to make progress on some really heavy lifting items here on the CIP, and if we need to go specifically to the CIP, we can. But we have the AMI system. This was broke out over 3 years. We wasted a whole year last year without receiving any meters because the supply chain is so bad right now. We have not received any this year so far. Our expectation is, in talking to our vendors, is we're going to receive some in the next month. They're the substantially large commercial meters will come in first, and then they estimate in May of next year all of our allotment of meters for residential and small commercial will all come in at once. That's exactly my response to Larry, Jared, and our vendors, but I didn't want to not have that if that's what they're telling us. And so due to the fact that we've basically pushed this cost, we feel comfortable listing it for the full price of purchasing all the meters if that should happen. Less the ones we think we'll get this fall possibly. So that's the 600,000 again. That same cost was broke out over 3 years, so nothing's changed. The pricing for us has not changed. It's locked in by the contract. It's just potentially they're all going to show up at once. We have some smaller items, replace reclosure controls at the 14th and Walker substations. SCADA system at the Ash Street substation. Got some pickup replacements that we are due for. GIS updates, they're permeated throughout the utilities and street department. A security gate upgrade, both at the electric and the horseshoe. And then potentially that purchase of property that we've discussed to expand the electric department. And then that, wow. The other big one is basically right now, a mass majority or a good majority of our equipment and the equipment we're anticipating buying, including a new bucket truck that we're gonna be years out for. We are sending a lot of this very technical equipment just outside in the open. And it is the best recommended policy that this stuff not sit outside of its regular use. So as we bring that stuff in, we need to expand the shop. We only see growth in our electrical grid and the expansion of our system, and so we do need an expansion. This is expansion, metal building, very similar to the building now. They're actually not building it on, so they tear out walls and stuff. They're gonna build it separate so that it doesn't have all those elements and interrupt the process. But the estimate they got most recently was $775,000 for the expansion we need, and that is not significant.
We see a lot of damage from the hail with the stuff outside.
We did, yes. Especially water and water is because we have other stuff in at the moment. We had a few vehicles there, but electric, there's significant damage, just windshield's all gone on equipment and things like that. We have not received our full property one. We got the vehicle one, but not all the property one from EMC yet. We are still waiting on that. So we had 68 sites they had to be evaluated by adjusters, so. And then we have two substantially large, investment projects, listed on here. PetSource is in the middle of their expansion right now. We believe we have approximately $300,000 in upgrades to, and these are just transformers that need to be located on site. This is not substantial upgrades to the substation. These are transformers that we would normally provide in the normal course of business. We do an approach up front where we kind of do an analysis based on the information I get from Larry and Jared. We look at our costs over 5 years, and if we see revenue return, we don't do anything specific. If we think after 5 years there's gonna be a problem, I think this one revenue returns way below 5 years. So we didn't have any specific issues with it, but we did need to purchase a number of transformers for that upgrade. The Tenneco project, same thing. Upgrades to their facility. They are, unless things change, are air conditioning their entire main building. So that's.
The factory main building?
Yeah. It is substantial, and so again, comparable in usage. The hard part for us is, as most of you that have served for a number of years now are familiar with, that sort of loading is not the kind of loading that we really like, because it's gonna be up in the summer, and then it's gonna be dormant in the winter, because they're not running air conditioning, and so we're gonna have stranded energy in the grid that we'll have to have reserved for them and keep track of. And so they'll be on, it's gonna be an expensive rate to cover it, but we'll still have the return on investment over time. So I'm not terribly concerned about this one either. But these, the cost increase for transformers is astronomical, and the lead times, I think the Tenneco one is actually buying used, certified, approved by their engineers. So just to get ahead of the supply chain market that's going on with transformers right now. So, but Larry and Jared have priced all this out as well, and so those are two projects we just have to keep moving to take care of our current customers. So, significant, but we know that by making those investments, we're selling power, the power returns and pays off those relatively quickly. And then we'll have some pretty big costs spread out over a few years. It might be in the infrastructure one, Prairie View development, or it's in our work in progress one. Just with the size, nature of that one, that's a pretty significant investment in cabinets and then line into the Prairie View development. So $300,000 over the time of that one, so estimated on the front end. So, questions on electric? Again, 0% increase recommended after 3 years of 1.5 to 3%, and so that's what we're going with on this one.
Just curiosity, Greg, when was the last time we had 0% in the electric? Was it 4 years ago, or?
It
has it been-
might have been,
I can't remember.
I think it's been since we haven't had one since I've been here.
A zero?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I can pull I'll write that down and I'll pull that.
I wanna
for you.
make sure I get my vote right, cause I don't wanna vote against a 0% increase.
So, we'll look that up. We have that information on here. I'll just look it up while we're talking about some other things. Okay. Any other electric questions? All right, move on to engineering. This is Mike's budget. Essentially nothing dramatically different other than the plotter that he helps pay for when that thing finally shows up. Mike is shared with the water, wastewater, and electric fund, and then the general fund. And so it's kind of a shared, a quarter each, correct, Nick?
Yep.
So, I can answer any questions about Mike's budget. Pretty standard stuff now that we got him up and running, just upgrading and reallocating our, AutoCAD's 3D support, looping, which we use for design and drawings.
Plotter was not paid for,
The plotter in there?
the plotter that we're budgeting for, that we should have gotten,
No.
it did not get paid for
Nope.
last year.
So we're just paying the rent, basically this one,
Gotcha.
paying the monthly fee to have that thing around. Any other questions on that? down to fire and rescue. Improvements around the building is probably our big one. Again, it's when they get time to kind of get together and start working out some planning. We also discussed billing, and I think after the mayor and I met with the fire department, the command team and stuff, I think that still is on track, but they're gonna finalize some things internally. So we still have it in the budget as of now, with the estimated revenues, let's see. 380,000 is what we had in there, so it's kind of split in the, or taking the number that we had received based on Medicaid, Medicare calls.
From October 1st.
Yep, from October 1st. Let's see. We go down there, continue to look at concrete issues around the building, that's the perimeter of the building, and then trying to get a design for the north lot, and a potential building on there. And then rocking an additional parking lot, and then we still have not, you'll note tanker unit 42, we've still not received that a year later either.
Chassis, can't get the chassis.
This is, supply chain is a huge issue and kind of slowing everything down with our budgets, that's why we see a lot of stuff connecting over from last year into this year. And then the upgrade to the rescue squad, that's a new cot lift system, that is needed, and then some other items, but making some headway over there, and then ultimately, we'll work with them to identify items that they would like to utilize the billing funds for, and identify those specifically in future budgets. So if they do wanna replace a ladder truck, or new ambulance, or expand the building specifically, identify that for usage of the billing funds, so. But that'll come from their recommendation when that's going on. We got our Kleenex this time. For crying, sickness, and health, weeping, whatever.
And Mentos.
Any other questions on fire and rescue? Are we Mentos too?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. We'll wait on that. No questions, alright. Golf, let's see, golf, nothing substantial. We continue to see increased usage. I think that play continues to be a great thing as we make adjustments to some of the stuff that's out there. We've seen increased revenues from alcohol sales, and so we'd just like to get that final payment that I think is this year on the golf course, will be our final debt payment on purchasing that. And then we're gonna make some adjustments and continue to work on some capital improvement items that I'll note down here. Our standard fare for getting new